Hello everyone, welcome along. This is a welcome back Champions League football show. Bit of a temperature check on how the 25-26 season is all going to go. Year 2 of the new format. Miguel Delaney is going to join us. He was in Bilbao on Tuesday night for Arsenal's routine 2-0 win. So we'll talk to him about that. We'll talk to him about Liverpool doing what they do last night and tournament European football at large. Will Slattery, hello.
Hey Joe, how are things?
Good. We are once again in our new studio and once again face to face.
Yeah, it feels like that scene in Inglourious Bastards in the bar. This is the kind of the proximity we have.
I know. I can't even fully make eye contact with you. It's too much.
I need to bring out my CV, I think, and we can go through it.
What first attracted you to the role, Will? As ever, with thanks to Sky Sports, our football show coverage, you can watch every live Premier League game this season, including Merseyside Derby on TNT Sports on Saturday. Get Sky Sports and Sports Extra on Sky or stream them with Now. Also, if you're in the Dublin area, the Premier League trophy is in Sky retail stores this week. So it's in Dundrum today, Thursday, or Blanchardstown Friday. You can get your photo taken with the trophy. The voracious, greedy types that are at UEFA, there's more Champions League this evening because in the absence of Europa League and Conference, they don't want to cede a single inch of real estate.
I love the meeting. Probably you're on a table similar to this in UEFA headquarters, and they're like, you know what, we have a Thursday. I've got a good idea, guys. 6 more matches on a Thursday.
Less intense than this seating format, I hope. But yeah,
Newcastle Barcelona though, it's still.
I know. So, but we can't do football tomorrow, so we're doing it today. It is a broader chat with Miguel. Is the plan. So the 2 nights thus far. I guess last night at Anfield was the game of the week in so much as I've seen. Liverpool 2-0 up in lightning fashion, and then, I mean, if ever there's a team that 2-0 down away from home in the first 10 minutes you're not worried about, it is Atletico. We'll be fine. And they got back to 2-2, and then nothing sure that Liverpool would score late. So they've done it again, 3-2 win. Arne Slot, speaking afterwards, once again on his birthday.
Second year in a row that I had to celebrate my birthday on a Champions League night, and the second time in a row that the players gave me a nice present because we won them both. But I would like to ask the UEFA if next year I can celebrate my birthday with my friends and family. Yeah, another great night here at Anfield. I think this is where the format is about. This is what the UEFA probably wanted, to have already the first game in the group stage that could have been quarterfinal, semi-final, last 16 game. And that's also what you saw today. Us playing really well, getting a lot of chances to finish the game off earlier, which we didn't. And then you face a mentality team like Atletico, and they always find a way to come back into the game, and that's what they did. The good thing for us is that we have the same mentality.
That clip just makes me think of my 12th birthday when I went to see Ireland play Brazil at the height of the Brian Kerr Ireland being good in friendlies era. 0-0 draw, and we played them off the pitch. Into my memory of it.
I was there.
Were you? Yeah.
We may have walked by each other.
Maybe. I was a lot younger, so you probably just...
Yeah. A lot younger. Steady. Mentality team is a good word for Atletico. It was a really good game.
Brilliant game. What was funny is that Liverpool were, at the same time, gave their best performance of the season by a distance, I think, but also still needed that late goal that has been a hallmark of all, I think, 5 other wins, which is mad. I'd love to know, has the team ever started 5 matches with their earliest winner was the 83rd minute against Arsenal? But they did look good. Like, Wirtz definitely had his best performance. He created a fair bit. Everyone was interested to see how Isak could play. Like, Slot indicated he wasn't going to start him. He ended up playing and looking quite sharp, actually. I was impressed with him.
Slot said afterwards he was shocked at how fit he was.
Yeah.
Because he did 65 minutes and looked very bright. And then Slot afterwards said, look, I guess that is the benefit of signing a 25-year-old who's used to this level and played lots of Premier League matches. If he was 20 and hadn't trained, it'd be so difficult for him. So he was good. I agree on Wirtz, because I've been a bit nonplussed by him so far. He's kind of just been floating around, like neat and tidy floating around, but not very impactful. But last night, you know, he is very sharp when he gets the ball. Like, he does things at a speed, and you know, even certain things, it didn't come off for him. Like, there was, you know, one cross he put in near post, which was a nothing cross. Defender in front of him, it was the only thing he could do, but it was the right thing to do, and it was just calling out for someone to get ahead of the keeper. And you know, so Everything he did had a bit of intent to it, and he's just bright. The ball comes to him, he quickens things up a lot.
Yeah, it's interesting because do we have a tally in our heads of goals and assists we would need to see from Virts to be like, oh, he has been a massively impactful player? Like, what kind of player will he be ultimately with Liverpool is going to be an interesting thing to figure out, because I don't think he has a goal or an assist yet.
Yeah,
I know it can be quite a blunt instrument maybe to judge a player sometimes, but we do a lot at the same time. But I just thought it was a much more positive performance from him. He looked much more at home. Physically didn't look as overwhelmed as maybe he had in some of the other games where he was kind of knocked off the ball a couple of times. So
yeah, he did about an hour through the middle, and then they moved him out to the left when they made a few changes. So he was good. Ngoma came on again. Wasn't as impactful as he's been, but
he was hounded by like two defenders every time he got the ball, to be fair.
I think they recognised early on, whether they had done their research on him or not, and I suspect they had. Even if they hadn't, they realised after 2 minutes, I need help over here.
They're hunting him in packs. Like,
yeah.
Interesting to see.
And it was so striking that last 10 minutes when he's on, because he got 20 minutes, which is, is a good amount of time. The Liverpool senior players, they look for him. Like, the play funnels all to the left. They didn't all hit Salah.
Yeah.
They really are like, he's free, fire it to him. I think they realise how special this guy is.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see, like, come the end of the season, like, how much of a role will he have played? Like, is he going to be all of a sudden playing starting matches? Is he going to be like the first man off the bench? Like, he's already become a fairly key impact player for them.
Yeah,
which is interesting.
I think he will.
Yeah,
I think there's a great chance come big games, end of the season, he'll either start or be first man off the bench, but like coming on after an hour.
Because sometimes you do see a young player dropped in having initially a big eye-catching impact, and then they don't necessarily maintain that. So like, he has looked good through 4 or 5 matches since he came on against Newcastle.
He has the fundamentals.
Yeah.
Like, he's not just, oh my God, the trickery there, that was amazing, and that amazing goal. It's everything he does. He doesn't get the ball away, and yet he's creative. He's so impressive. Bradley had a tricky moment for the equaliser. He gave away the throw-in initially and then should have done better against his marker who got the cross in. But these things happen, I suppose. Slot's general opinion was, as you alluded to, this was not like the Burnley and Newcastle games where we didn't create anything. We were much better. So he was pretty happy. And then I guess there was Simeone who was talking about the kerfuffle at the end of the game. There have been insults all match, but hey, I'm the one who has to stay calm and endure everything. My reaction to the insult is not justifiable, but you don't know what it's like to be insulted for 90 minutes non-stop. Even when he went over to the Liverpool fan that he obviously had particular beef with, that fan just screamed in his face. Like, thrilled. It just never works out.
Nose to nose with them, like, you don't see it often.
Yeah, so that's Liverpool. Merseyside derby on Saturday. I think it's the lunchtime kickoff.
12:30,
Yeah. Elsewhere, we had PSG 4-0 win against Atalanta. Very impressive. Kvaratskhelia.
So good.
Oh my God.
Oh, he's a joke.
Yeah. He scored their second.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
Best player on the pitch. Nuno Mendes really good as well. Scored. So they just put that into cruise control. Bayern beat Chelsea 3-1. Looking very good, Bayern. Harry Kane scored 2 second and third goals. Shambolic third goal from Chelsea point of view, giving the ball away in their own half. Cole Palmer scored brilliant goal for Chelsea. He was on the run, played a 1-2, played back to him, and like, he just rifles a top corner.
Yeah.
But it's so controlled, so deliberate. I mean, he just oozes class.
Had another goal disallowed as well. Like, he's someone who I think his stats had dropped off considerably the back half of last season in terms of his goal scoring.
Yeah.
And he looked very sharp last night. That was an unbelievable finish into the top corner, as you say.
Yeah, rejuvenated.
Kane looked very sharp again.
Honestly,
Like, we were talking about Lewandowski last time we were in, and like, Kane's numbers already in the Bundesliga and for Bayern have been similar.
He should have longevity. Like, he's not a pace merchant. He should still be able to do a lot of what he's doing at
Picking
30.
spots, like, he's clever when to expend the energy.
Yeah, you can see him 37, 38, still Champions Leaguing. On Luis Enrique, by the way, you will like this. So PSG 4-0 winners, like I said, really good performance. And Enrique continued the trend from the Lens game in Ligue 1, where he's now watching the first half from the stands. I get a lot of information that I can use at halftime. For some time now, I've been watching rugby coaches.
Finally. What's taking so long?
I know. Who analyse matches from a very different perspective. I wanted to follow the first half from the stands. This may be a Google Translate issue. It's magnificent, he said. It's different. I can control everything. What has been taken them so long.
It's interesting because I remember about 7 or 8 years ago, Stephen Rochford for Mayo used to start in the stands as well a bit, and he got loads of criticism. It's like, this isn't the done thing, and like the vantage point is so different. Like, you know, from attending a match, like if you're sitting in row one versus up in the press box, you can see so much. It's an interesting thing. I'll be interested if other coaches do it. Like, I guess you have that immediacy of being able to communicate with the players when you're pitch side, like versus having to relay it through an assistant. But it is interesting. I'm not sure why it's like in soccer, coaches are like exclusively in the dugout, and there hasn't been much experimentation with where you should sit. Maybe that seems like the best of both worlds, like taking what you've gleaned from the first half and being touchline for the second half. I don't know.
I think it's a no-brainer.
Yeah,
because I mean, to your point about being able to communicate readily with the players, and I guess maybe you feel you can feel the game better, but like obviously the genesis of that is before there's communications where you can easily radio down to your number two.
Yeah.
Whereas now that's obviously completely possible. So the benefit of being able to get a quick message on from the from the sideline as opposed to being stuck in the stands, that's negated now. You can you can talk constantly to the players if you want. Tell them to take 10 yards right. You can be constantly onto your number two, who can be constantly onto the players, and they'll be told if he's telling you something, it's coming from me.
Does it lose some of that? Say Pep Guardiola often brings the guys in like with a scruff of the neck almost, and is really detailed. And say when Klopp was the Liverpool manager, do you need to see that demonstrative? Does that give the players? You can't see them up in the crowd. Like, I don't know. There's maybe some elements to it that you do lose, but certainly you can see the match better. Like, I think that's undoubted that you'd be able to see. You can see the movement of the players far better.
Far better. See, I think that could be an ego thing on managers. Like on the one hand, and we're watching on TV, so obviously, the camera focuses in on Klopp is the great example, Guardiola a lot, and so there's such a main character to the TV experience. But when you're on a pitch or even when you're in the stand, it's not like you're glued to the manager, or Klopp doing something that has the same impact as he does when it's like, let's go tighten Klopp with camera 2.
Yeah.
I'd be curious to talk to the players. Does like Kloppo over there really inspire me on the far side of the pitch, really help me that much? I'd be sort of doubtful.
Most of the players can't really see him. I
don't think so. I think there's an ego aspect, or just like a manager, it feels good to exert some kind of energy and control on the whole thing. I think it's a no-brainer. I did the Etihad tour at the end of last season, and even the dugout. I know Guardiola stands a lot, but like even the dugout slopes down another few feet. You're barely kneecap height when you're sitting in the seat.
Yeah.
Maybe over time you develop the skill of sitting arse level and being able to tell what's going on the far side of the pitch. But I remember I was just saying to people I was with, I was like, I can't see a thing here. I'd hate to watch the match in Pep Guardiola's seat. I tell you who started it, Sam Allardyce.
Going up to the stand, yeah.
He's the pioneer. And if he was called Sam Allardyce, they'd all be doing it now. I tell you that for nothing. Tuesday, we'll talk to Miguel about Arsenal 2-0 win away to Bilbao. Real Madrid 2-1 Marseille. Trent out for 8 weeks, came after.
Yeah, it looks like he might miss that Liverpool game.
You said that was a very open game.
Yeah. It was a classic kind of the Virgin midweek game that doesn't feature like an English team, and you're just
the Virgin midweek.
You're just dropped into like a European contest, and I'm so glad I went for that instead of Spurs Villarreal. It was very entertaining.
Yeah, shocking penalty decision.
Yeah, it was. Madrid, I still don't know what to make of Madrid, and like Alonso obviously still very early in his tenure, and the players they've signed, they don't look as cohesive as PSG, say, or some of the other really top teams. They have really good individual players, but I'm still not sure how it meshes together.
Vinicius doing some bench time.
Yeah.
Which I approve of.
You've been questioning Vinicius, to be fair, for a while.
Amazing. Like, on the ball, for sure, he is too much of a liability to play on the left-hand side for any team to cope with, I think. I suspect this is Alonso breaking him. And we're going to... this is Mourinho with Joe Cole. By the end of the season, Vinicius will not be like, I'm just not going to press the guy right there. You go. That ship won't sail, I don't think, with Alonso. And Spurs 1-0 win Villarreal. So that's kind of the gist of opening 2 nights of Champions League with another night to come. Let's chat to Miguel. Miguel, what's happening? Welcome.
Hello, yeah. Thank you for having me.
So let's just do a little welcome back Champions League temperature check first of all. We are in year 2 of this expanded 36-team tournament competition format. So it was generally, I think, lukewarm reception at the start last year, but then the final day, the final game or two was very exciting, and people were making the point, well, look, 2 seasons ago, the final group games, 13 teams had already secured qualification from the group stages as we knew them, whereas here last year, 27 teams on the final day had something to play for. Only Liverpool and Barcelona were through to the last 16. It was very dramatic. There was a novelty in not having to do the home and away, especially when it was a mismatch. I, for one, gave it a thumbs up. Where were you on it all?
I was probably
thumbs down.
Much more down on it. Not completely thumbs down. I suppose because the classic question of cui bono, why is this happening? Well, it's happening because the super clubs. I mean, this is like to make no bones about it. All of this was negotiated at the same time as the Super League. It came out. I mean, it was ratified in April 2021, the day after the Super League project, and this was kind of the big club's alternative solution, and essentially more games to guarantee more TV money, all the rest of it, and consequently, I suppose, lower stakes for a lot of those games. And even I have to say, yes, it picked up towards the end last year. And the final day where there was kind of 18 games going on at once, that was supposed to be this big television event. I actually don't think that quite worked as intended because there was almost too much happening. It was difficult to keep track of, which is actually, a key issue with all this. And I do still think
I'm talking to Goldilocks here. I mean, it's just a bit too much excitement now. Come on.
No, but it was too hard to keep what was like. Goals are flying. Well, what's that mean?
Okay.
But also there's an element of artificiality about the stakes because, like, in many cases, right, only 2 positions. You say only Liverpool and Barcelona were through. But like Arsenal pretty much knew they were true in the last 2 games, and also some of it was about whether we're in the kind of direct places or in the playoffs. And yes, you want to avoid the playoffs, but it's almost this kind of typically modern football paradoxical problem where, oh no, you have to play more games that you actually wanted to do anyway. Although these are knockouts. All that said, something needed to happen to the system. The group stage was clearly dying, although, as we discussed before, the group stage was dying because, in contrast, 20 years ago, there's too much of, or 30 years ago, there's too much of financial difference. Like, I mean, we've said it again, like, in the 90s, the group stage was, it felt like the knockouts because, these were massive events for Manchester United, massive events for Rosenborg against Milan. What it does do now, to be fair, is it feels like it create. So I'm not necessarily sure there's more opportunity for less wealthy clubs, but there's more opportunity for games. And also, the one thing I'd say, one of the standout features of this early week, or this first week and the first 2 games, has been some proper kind of good football spectacles among the less wealthy clubs. I mean, Qarabağ, who we know from kind of some of the qualification with Ireland, with Irish clubs this year, have been, I mean, that's one of the stories. It's led to Mourinho returning to Benfica. Bodo Glimt, Union Saint-Gilloise, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, the Belgian club. I know actually a few people at that club. That's a great story. And they actually fancy that they can do something different in this tournament. And I also do, that's what European football should be about, that variety and vitality to it. But of course, I suppose the flip side is how it's eventually going to proceed. And also, and maybe this has coloured my attitude a bit, I was in Bilbao. I just got back last night for the Arsenal game. A great trip. My mother is from very close to the region, so I do know it well. But it's actually I haven't done too many games at the San Mamés. But while everything about the trip is great, the game, I mean, that is a classic case of one of the wealthy super clubs just basically crushing a big European club that can compete at that level. I mean, Arsenal, they were so competent, but didn't even need to be kind of excellent. And they just used their strength and depth to ultimately beat Athletic.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't disagree with everything that you've said. It's all about perspectives, isn't it? Like, by comparison to you, I'm just a Philistine. Because I was like, you mentioned Qarabağ there and all that stuff. Yeah, I just sat down and watched Liverpool Atletico and thought it was really good. You know what I mean? And I was like, well, see what happens next week. I don't need 20 good games. So perspective is everything. In terms of the Favourites for this year's tournament, like PSG were so wonderful last year, and I just had a glance because I was like, who are the favourites for this year's tournament? And it was really striking. I don't want to mention odds necessarily because I know some people want to avoid that, and the problem gambling is a real thing, but it is useful just to illustrate the point. Liverpool, Arsenal, PSG, Barcelona, all locked on 6-1, followed closely by Real Madrid, Bayern, City, all within 9-1. So 7 teams under this blanket of between 6 and 9-1, and then a bit of a jump to Chelsea, and out we go. So I completely accept what you're saying about this distilling, this concentration of money at the top, and it's not good, certainly for a large portion of the season. But like for the 2025-26 edition, to have Liverpool, Arsenal, PSG, Barca, Real Madrid, Bayern, City, if they get things going, like 7 teams on a given night, I couldn't, anything could happen there. That's a pretty healthy situation.
Well, it's a super clubs, isn't it?
Yeah.
Super League clubs.
Yeah. Again, this is the Philistine. I mean, look, I know we all want Qarabag to get to the semi-final, and the Porto thing was fun, but like, is there a sport in the world which is immune to this concentration of bigger, richer at the top? At least if you've got 7 of them, that's decent innings.
But it comes down to this kind of constant debate in sport now, I suppose, or the constant mention of how, well, NFL, the American sports, for everything around them, they've been so conscious of the need to protect competitive balance in a way that football has almost, actually, I would say, completely abandoned. And there's a lot of stuff happening in European football right now where these problems are actually being challenged under the radar. At the same time, of course, we're seeing things like the Club World Cup, potential future expansions, leagues trying to play matches abroad, which actually might worsen. There's all sorts of competing forces on football.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like that. Football, obviously, it's allowed the situation to develop where there's there's constant concentration of resources into what feels a narrowing group of clubs. I mean, I suppose, and I don't think this is just nostalgia, because you can actually, it's something that can be measured. But I mean, I brought up 20, 30 years ago. To me, it is a sadness that although, yes, there's a good group of clubs that win it, that's actually quite a good number. It's mostly going to be the same clubs. And if you compare it to 25 years ago, where Valencia are one of the best teams in Europe, and the fact that can't happen now is, I think, bad for football. I mean, the strength of the sport, for anyone who's played Sabuti or looked through the catalogues of it, the strength of the sport is actually its diversity, its colour, exotic names. That's what European football was supposed to be about.
Yeah.
And actually, teams like Qarabag, or you don't even need to go so exotic, given I suppose a lot of people don't know them. But even we're talking about PSV, who got battered by Union Saint-Gilloise. The classic is always Dynamo Kiev. I mean, the fact that they so quickly lose players to the big wealthy clubs of Western Europe now has obviously had this debilitating effect on European football. And it's why, well, there's obviously all sorts of financial arguments you can make. One solution I think I would bring in that would immediately solve a lot of football's issues is the mirror image to the old foreign player rule. So the old foreign player rule, which is against EU labour law, because obviously you can't, because it blocks where people can move. But what it did was, I suppose, because teams could only play 3 foreign players and 2 assimilated players, so foreign players that lived in a country for 5 years, that immediately ensured talent was more spread. Because if a big team can't fill 5 spaces or 6 spaces in the way they used to by just taking the best from elsewhere, by definition, more are staying where they are, and it just spreads talent across. So while you can't bring that in, you can bring in the same effect in another way, which is, for me, I would ensure that every single team in Europe has to play 3 homegrown players in every starting lineup. I think that'd be so much healthier football, create a community connection, also be in sync with labour law, because it's about encouraging development and training. So I know we're off tangent here, but I do feel this is connected. And
yeah. No, I fundamentally accept it was a sweet spot maybe 25 years ago, around that Valencia time and Dortmund time, and it was amazing. But then everything in my life was better 25 years ago, so I'm not sure. There is a bias. Do you have a strong favourite of that cohort, by the way?
So I do think I've covered them a fair bit. So maybe I am slightly conditioned by maybe getting just at the moment being in touch with more info from Arsenal. Um, but I think one of the things they've done this summer that I think is going to prove a massive difference this season is their immense strength and depth. So basically, kind of Arteta got to some of those key games last season, and he's basically missing half of his best 11. Now, ironically, he's still missing half of his best 11 now at the Forest game at the weekend, like Atletico on Tuesday. That hasn't had Saka, Odegaard, Saliba, Havertz. These are players in the last 3 years.
Yeah.
Anytime Arsenal had an injury to one of them, it felt like there was this kind of emotional crisis around the club. Now they're playing to the same level without even realizing it. So Arteta's specific response to last year, and it's a specific response to the fact that now, and this is another slight issue I suppose I have where the modern competition is, because this is not what the Champions League is supposed to be, but it is. It's essentially a parallel league campaign. So the biggest clubs are going to have to go the distance in two concurrent league programs. That is demanding a lot. I think that's one of the reasons why we initially saw some struggles at clubs like Man City and Paris Saint-Germain last year. But of course, the response of the super clubs, and you can see it in the way, even the way Liverpool have added Isak, say, to Mohamed Salah, when they don't strictly need him from a first 11 perspective right now. And why Arsenal have done this is they're just going to go out and boost their squads. And I think Arsenal have by far the deepest strength in Europe. You can see it in that squad, the number of options. And I think when it gets to especially November, January, when there are games every 3 days, and you can't keep playing the same 11 all the time, and in the knock-on effect of that from February to April, I think that's when we're going to see the real virtue. And I think that way, that's why Arsenal might win the competition out of almost, I don't want to say attrition, but just by being able to weather all this more because suddenly they've got all these options.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And then who knows the extent to which that early consistency is rewarded. Like PSG timed their run beautifully, so poor. 15th, I think, going into the final round of games and then just got better and better and better.
But we've got another issue there, of course, which is, and this is related to what I just said about the parallel league campaigns, that for Paris Saint-Germain's league campaign, they don't necessarily have to
Fair.
I mean, it's they're going to win the French league, and I think last season maybe they got a little bit struck by the fact that, okay, to be fair, Luis Enrique's ideas hadn't been as ingrained yet, but they weren't quite used to maybe as congested a season as they'd had, and once they adapted, so many of their players were fresh. So that will probably have a massive effect as well.
Yeah. So as you said, Arsenal and Bilbao. Competent. Madueke looks to be an excellent signing. They were without, I think, 7 key men. I read, you mentioned some of them. It was Martinelli and Trossard, and Martinelli with the assist for Trossard's goal, who got the 2 goals. In rugby, they've started talking about finishers off the bench. Arteta is calling them impactors. So let's just all hope that doesn't catch
finishers
on.
as well.
Finishers
actually.
as well.
He did specifically say finishers after the game, and
Okay.
he's got this. So Arteta is part of. I actually went to an event he did 2 weeks ago with this group called. I've got it in front of me actually.
Was that with Steve Kerr?
Yeah, it was the leadership
yes.
playbook.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
with Steve Kerr, it was absolutely fascinating.
Was it? Because actually somebody sent it to me and said, this is really good. I have become, like, I get sick and dizzy at the thought of another sport, what business can learn from it, leadership thing.
This wasn't quite that.
Okay.
I mean, obviously it's pitched to that, but it was essentially just 2 very interesting and high-performing sporting figures. And obviously, you need to look at Steve Kerr's career, his life, really, talking about their experiences. More so. I mean, it was funny actually. Kerr he was brilliant at kind of anecdotes and talking about his lived experience and all this. Where with Arteta, you could sense a little bit that he'd come in with stuff he wanted to say, and he was really good at that.
Right.
But when it was kind of when there was some open-ended questions, and there was a few Arsenal fans there who probably paid a bit to be there, and they were asking questions. Like one of them was about how you deal with difficult players, and there's an obvious answer there about Aubameyang, and Arteta sidestepped that. Whereas Kerr was talking about, how Phil Jackson dealt with kind of Dennis Rodman and all this sort of thing.
I must check it out.
Yeah,
But sorry,
yeah.
impactors slash finishers.
But yeah, so as part of these groups that Arteta is involved in, I know for a fact he's kind of been speaking to people like Eddie Jones, who is obviously
Yeah.
big on the issue of finishers, Joe Schmidt as well. And I asked him after the game when he mentioned because he specifically used the phrase finishers can be as important as starters. And I asked him, well, have you got that from rugby? And he said, yeah, and I really like it. And this may be one of the interesting things about Arsenal season and the kind of the other side of having a really deep squad. Like I've been hearing stories that Arsenal squad is so big that players are having to use like areas of the training ground or patches of grass they didn't necessarily expect to. It's much more expanded. And there's an obvious challenge there in terms of how you keep players happy, and how you keep them content if they're not being picked. And I know like there's already been some, not quite agitation, but players are wondering, well, I haven't played for 4 games in a row here. And one way you do that is, of course, is just emphasize that, look, the game has changed. It's not about starting anymore. It's about coming on and being able to impact coming on. So once you, it sounds such a simple thing, but it is true basically because this is what and Martinelli and Trossard. I thought it was so symbolic that they were the two players that were decisive on Tuesday, and the way also they set each other up for both goals was so illustrative in this because
Yeah.
they've almost been kind of Arsenal's two forgotten men a little bit as
Yeah.
they kind of sign this cast of thousands.
Um, we'll get to Liverpool in a second. Just on the whole borrowing from rugby thing, did you see? Because I've been we mentioned earlier in the podcast, so the listeners heard already. But did you see Luis Enrique watching from the stands, and he was talking about it, where he said, "I just get a lot of information I can use at half time. For some time now, I've been watching rugby coaches, and they analyse matches from a very different perspective. I wanted to follow the first half from the stands. It's magnificent. It's different. I can control everything." As Sam Allardyce again was like,
Yeah.
guys, this makes so much sense to me.
Oh, complete. Especially with the way football is going, and I think so. I saw a little clip of him going up. I think where he went is the press box that we sit in, which would have been quite interesting to have. So anytime we've been to the Parc des Princes, I think that's where the media are, which would have been interesting to have Luis Enrique near us. But also, there's that brilliant documentary that about Luis Enrique and his first season at Paris Saint-Germain. It came up a lot, obviously, in the build-up to the Champions League final last year. But in that, I specifically mentioned him. He was just. It's like the cameras are in on him as he's doing one of his analysis sessions, and he just suddenly turns around to the cameras, going, "The one thing I always notice that we're sometimes I'm down with the sideline. I can't see the game from there. I need to be up high." And so he mentioned it then. So like this isn't a surprise. And yeah, in a game that is so systemized, it makes absolute sense that a coach like that would want to have that vantage point. It did also make me think as well. I remember once being at the old White Hart Lane before it was redone for a game, and Martin Keown was there. And we were just kind of chatting idly in that it's a really small room there, and we were chatting idly about the position of the press box. And I actually said I actually prefer a high press box because you can see more. And Keown, to be fair, did make the point that that's good from one perspective, but the other is if you're the lower down, you can feel the emotion of a game more and the kind of like the intensity of the challenges, who's going in on who, a little kind of thing like, and that which is also like a perspective I hadn't thought of, but is obviously just as valid in it.
Yeah, it's very interesting. We'll see if it catches on. Liverpool, bubbling away in phenomenal fashion or getting away with it?
I think for the moment they're getting away with it now. And the interesting thing about that is it's both encouraging and a worry for all their rivals. Encouraging because I think like there's obviously clear flaws in this team. If there weren't flaws, they wouldn't be in the situation they were in. And obviously, and they've had an issue all season. They can be cut open. It looked like that had been rectified a little bit with the Arsenal and Burnley games. Although I think the Arsenal game was a product of the type of game it was. It was basically two teams showing each other respect. And then suddenly, like the way they just opened by Atletico twice last night in a way that shouldn't really happen. Obviously, they've still got the character, and like that's part of it as well. But there are structural problems in this team that Slot hasn't sorted yet. The flip side is this is when they're vulnerable and they're picking up points, and the likelihood is that Slot will eventually fix this.
Yeah.
And that is what is ominous, I suppose, for anyone looking to take their title.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. You talk to a lot of people in the game. It's always great to chat to you because you've a feel for how the game is seeing things. Is there a sense, is Ngoma as sensational as he appears to be?
Yeah, I mean, like, although weirdly, I mean, the one he was talked about in the summer, and he has been talked about as one of these kind of coming forces. I think a little bit like Max Dowman actually. It's purely because of their age. There was a sense they okay, we're talking about two potentially the best players in English football for some time to come here. But don't think anyone expected them to be ready, quite ready this soon. I mean, for a player to be having impact like this now is incredible, really. Like this, just even by virtue of the fact of kind of, I suppose, having the mentality to, because we're talking about boys, not even kind of 18-year-old teenagers, but boys. So to be able to kind of stand up physically and psychologically is incredible. I mean, part of me wants to put this in the kind of context of something that's been discussed a lot in the last few years, which is that football is becoming a much younger game for all sorts of reasons, mostly because of pressing and that you need kind of young intensity to press properly. Also because of um, the fluctuations of the market, and the younger you buy players, the better chance you have to eventually sell them on. And that's having actually, I think, a bit of a counterproductive effect because suddenly everyone wants to buy young players, so the price of them is going up. But I do think when we're talking like that's applicable to players who are say 18 to 22. I'm not sure it's necessarily applicable to kind of 16-year-olds who just come through from the youth team because like I mean they shouldn't really be this good.
Yeah.
I mean, and then the other example who's for me, who if I had a vote, I would have picked for the Ballon d'Or on Monday, Lamine Yamal. When I saw almost all of his games at the Euros last year, and like again, he shouldn't have been capable of that level of performance. Maybe it's something in how, obviously, how advanced academies are compared to 20 years ago. How I suppose, and like just what they just in the manner they educate players. Also, maybe how now, in a way that we've never seen before, young players are just immersed in the language of the game to a much more profound degree than ever. So talent, that classic innate talent that players like Yamal or Rio or Dauman have, is going to be amplified. I mean, I think that's possibly so. They don't feel the same hurdles as they would have 20, or the same initial obstacles they would have 20 years ago. Because if you think about it now, like I mean, like this debate came up recently between Owen and Rooney.
Yeah.
And Owen, and to be fair, he pointed out Rooney didn't have the same scoring record. Now Rooney was never a goal scorer in the same way as Owen. Part of him was about his impact, but still, like the way he got 7 goals in his first season for Everton. That was considered fine for someone of his age because obviously he has to adapt. Whereas these lads, I mean, it's already like with Yamal anyway, and now already Rio suggesting the same. Like the numbers are incredible low, and the numbers are such a kind of an illustration of the or a reflection of how they're applying their natural talent.
Yeah. Um, throw one at you. If you don't have a sense of what's going on, no pressure. We'll move on. Alonso and Vinicius. Like, it's not to say he's turfing him out or anything, but of the 5 games thus far, he's been on the bench for 2 of them, whipped off in all the second halves, was on the bench this week. I don't know what's going on here, what your interpretation is. I mean, I'm just, and I'm sure I'm wrong about this. I'm just not a fan of Vinicius. Obviously, he can do great things on the ball, but particularly playing on the left-hand side, he is such a liability without the ball. I mean, it's shocking the extent to which he will not help out his teammates. There are multiple times last year where, Jude Bellingham is like, what, hands spread going, surely you see you have to press him here or we're just doomed. And Vinicius still won't do it. So my guess from afar is Alonso's trying to just break him here and show him I will not accept that. Is that what's happening, or is it a personality thing, or do we know yet?
No, I think there's an element of that, especially with how obviously Alonso is a classic modern coach in that way, or a prominent example of a modern coach. Now on the Bellingham thing, I mean, it's a striking one that because Bellingham can be as good. I remember being at the the Madrid Arsenal game in the Bernabeu last year, and the Bernabeu, you do have a very high vantage point. You can see from very high up. And at one moment was it the second half? The 3 of them, Mbappe and Bellingham and Vinicius, are just standing there.
Yeah. I could
And
be,
I, like,
I could be
so
wrong about this. I sort of give Bellingham a pass because I've seen him work really hard. He's got a great engine. There's times in that team last season he's getting trucked out to the left hand side when he doesn't especially want to. I honestly think he became a bit affected.
I mean,
Like
yeah.
if I press now, it's just foolish because I know he's not going to press alongside me. Then that could be giving him a massive pass, but that's how I saw it.
And you do wonder as well whether they're going like, well, if you're not going to do it, I'm not going to do
Correct.
it. Right?
Yeah.
They're getting beaten in the game and all that. But I suppose, I mean, in modern football, you can carry one, maybe two players who won't press in the way you want. And in that situation, it does feel like Vinny is always going to lose out because Mbappe is the president's star man. In fact, when Madrid were kind of building this new team, so Madrid, like the way Madrid have reinvented themselves, basically to become a force again. Because like this was a club that around 29-20 were in massive debt and were in crisis, looking like they were being overtaken in the game. Hazard, a little bit like Griezmann at Barcelona, came this example of a team that was just a club that was just doing things the wrong way, spending a fortune on the flip side of players like Rio and Max Dowman, players in the late 20s, no resale value, and players who had actually maybe gone past their peak. So what Madrid concentrated on, and this was true, like someone who's seen as like a real supremo for talent in the club, Juni Calafat, their head of recruitment, he's Brazilian. They basically concentrate, they're going to sign the best players in the world from 17 to 20. Their scouting department isn't even that big because there's a sense that you have to be of a certain quality and have a certain personality to play for Real Madrid. And also, they've unearthed in the, like, I think by the time they won the Champions League in 22 and 24, something like half the team had been signed either as teenagers or before the age of 22, Vinicius being one. So they steadily built the team up again through doing exactly this and letting it evolve together. I remember being told by someone close to Madrid the night before the 2024 Champions League final, which is just before Mbappe signed forever, we were talking about, well, where's Mbappe going to fit? And I go, well, what the president wants, the president gets.
Yeah.
Essentially, with the meaning being essentially, they didn't really have a place for him, but it's Mbappe, so they're going to get him. And now suddenly they have the situation, I suppose, where if you have to carry two, players that won't press, Vinny's going to lose out. And so I think there is an element of Alonso's kind of almost trying to condition him into pressing in this way.
Yeah, fascinating to watch it. Just one last one. I haven't asked you, I don't know if you have a feel for this, but just the last month or so, I think it is month. Yeah, it's August. UEFA, I mean, FIFA, I haven't seen any dispatches, but with regard to Gaza, UEFA have dipped their toe in, I suppose, for want of a better phrase, in terms of saying something about the crisis there. The two notable examples being the tweet after Suleiman al-Obeid's death, the Palestinian Pele, which Mo Salah amplified in fairly memorable fashion, asking, well, how did he die? I don't think he just drifted off in his sleep. And then the Super Cup final, which, look, by the standards of UEFA, where they did on their pitch with the world watching have stop killing children, stop killing civilians, I suspect they would feel that was fairly on the nose and pointed language by their standards. David Carell on Friday is what I wanted to mention, said that the FAI are making, quote, representations to UEFA over Israeli participation in European football. He didn't expand on what the representations consisted of. He just said, we've made representations, and that's where David Carell left it. Football grappling with this issue. Aside from Mo Salah, I don't see many high-profile players coming out at a time where, the reticence of the last 2 years is dissolving. Actors are coming out of the Emmys or musicians. There's a kind of a groundswell. I don't see many high profile footballers coming out. I don't know. Are UEFA going to do more? Is this a big kind of contentious issue for them, or what are you hearing on this whole front? How football grapples with this, like this extraordinary situation.
I mean, look, we know football's policy is generally to stay apolitical. Now, in most cases, I would actually have a certain sympathy, to a certain degree, I'd say, and I hope this isn't misconstrued, because as soon as football stands to this, and this is what I have sympathy with, not necessarily their stance on, like, their general stance on specific issues, it's that as soon as you make a decision on one conflict, you then have to make an adjudication on every single conflict around the world. And then you're getting into really difficult areas, and there's potentially like all sorts of fragmentation, or a team is not being played at all. So that's where I can buy it essentially. Now, people will obviously make the contrast between how Russia was approached and how Israel was approached. Now, the reason for that, and this is why the FAI's the statements so far are very interesting. The sole reason that Russia were thrown out was because FIFA and UEFA wanted to basically take the same stance. They wanted to just not touch it, let football play. And you can get into all sorts of other discussions about how a national team is representative of the country, but not actually the state. So with the same token, I remember being at the Iran-England game in the 2022 World Cup, and some of the Iranian players were actually kind of doing what were brave gestures that were making clear their displeasure at the state at a very difficult time. So that's how this issue can be complicated.
Yeah.
But one of the reasons that the FIFA and UEFA were pushing this was because basically Poland were due to play Russia in a World Cup qualifier, and they just said, no, we're not playing it. At that point, FIFA and UEFA were basically forced into an action they wouldn't usually take. All of this is why countries being banned, especially kind of World Cup or Euros level, is really rare. Some of the most prominent countries being banned for non-football reasons. So there's been a few cases of countries getting banned because a player has been an unregistered player has played, all this sort of thing. Well, I think like South Africa, obviously, Yugoslavia after the war, or during the war, most famously they were supposed to play in Euro '92 and their place to take out Denmark, and now Russia. And one of the reasons this hasn't happened yet is because ultimately, no one at European level has spoken out against Israel or made representations about how they wouldn't want to play Israel. And let's not forget, one of the very reasons that Israel and UEFA and not the Asian Confederation at the moment is because a lot of Asian countries refuse to play them.
It was in the 1980s that they said we're not playing Israel anymore, and hence early 90s Israel moved to European club and Euros.
So I mean, it's and the thing about it is the national associations, because this would essentially amount to taking a geopolitical position. They are naturally guided by their governments, and in most cases, look, obviously this has been such a kind of topic around this about kind of individual government stance on Israel. Ireland and Spain, say, and one or two others have obviously been among the more outspoken countries. So I think it's striking then that if Ireland is the first country to actually start, or the first federation to maybe start talking about this, and that's where we might see change. On the Super Cup thing, I look, this is me purely speculating. All I'm going to say here, I'm just going to just point out some facts. I don't know how that decision was taken, but I find it interesting that they put a statement out at a big game involving a club that is owned by Qatar. Qatar, obviously, being they have been seen they've been Hamas have had an office in Doha, and it's been kind of a stage for back channel negotiations. So I think at the very least, it's striking that game was used for that statement. And I mean, look, all of this does show as much as a sport like football tries to insulate itself from geopolitics, you can't, especially as football has done, willingly allow geopolitics in.
Okay, very good. Always a pleasure, Miguel. Great to have you on. We'll chat soon. Thanks so much.
All right, spot on.